Welcome back to X Coins hub of numismatics world. It was the kind of coin most people wouldn't give a second glance. Slipped into a vending machine slot or forgotten at the bottom of a jeans pocket, the 1982 Roosevelt dime had become part of the unnoticed rhythm of daily transactions. For decades, it lived a quiet life, tiny, silver-colored, just another member of America's pocket change family. But what if that same coin, no bigger than a fingernail, held a secret? What if the ordinary dime you carried in your wallet turned out to be worth more than some used cars? What if one specific version of that 1982 dime, struck at the Denver Mint, could command a value of up to $128,000 today? That question isn't just a fantasy, it's reality for a few lucky collectors. And the story behind that small coin is one of overlooked rarity, minting evolution, and the obsessive dedication of those who search for treasure in the most unexpected places. The 1982 Roosevelt dime, for all its subtlety and apparent sameness, hides within it a moment of transformation in the U.S. Mint's production history. In that year, something changed. Something subtle, something physical, and something that would go unnoticed by millions, until a few sharp-eyed individuals discovered what had slipped through the cracks. To understand how this happened, we need to turn back the clock. It's 1982. The United States is in the grip of economic recession. Inflation is high. Unemployment is rising. The federal government is looking for ways to cut costs wherever it can. The Mint, responsible for producing billions of coins each year, is not immune to this pressure. That year, as part of its ongoing cost-saving measures, the Mint made a significant and largely unannounced change to how it manufactured dimes. Up until this point, all dimes had featured their Mint mark, a tiny D for Denver or P for Philadelphia, clearly stamped on the obverse of the coin, just to the left of Franklin Roosevelt's neck. It was a tradition dating back decades, part of what gave collectors a roadmap of each coin's origin and identity. But then, mid-year, something shifted. The Mint stopped including Mint marks on certain coins, temporarily, without major announcement. And that's where the intrigue begins. Some 1982 dimes, those struck at Denver, were minted without a D. These error coins weren't supposed to happen. They weren't commemoratives, or proofs, or experimental runs. They were everyday dimes that had quietly become something far more valuable. And because there was no official press release, no warning, and no indication to the public, these no-mint-marked Denver dimes slipped into circulation like ghosts. Collectors didn't notice right away. But those who did, those who took the time to study their change, to look closely at the familiar face of Roosevelt, found something unusual. Here was a 1982 dime, clearly from the era, but with no D on its face. The lack of a Mint mark wasn't due to wear or damage. It was clean, intentional, and pristine. That absence wasn't a flaw. It was a message. And it meant that something rare had just been discovered. As the years passed, the importance of these no Mint marked dimes began to grow. Numismatic circles buzzed with speculation. Was this just a few coins? A small batch? Or could there be thousands, still hiding in junk drawers and piggy banks across the country? The answer came slowly. Grading services began to see more examples of these dimes come in, but the supply never ballooned. Instead, it became clear that these coins were, indeed, incredibly rare, especially in uncirculated or near-mint condition. Their scarcity wasn't due to destruction or disappearance. It was due to oversight. A fleeting window in which the Mint altered its procedure, struck a few coins, and then moved on, never realizing it had created a collectible phenomenon. The Roosevelt dime, designed by John R. Sennick and first issued in 1946, had always been a steady presence in American pockets. It wasn't flashy like the dollar, or romanticized like the penny. But it had history. Roosevelt's face was chosen to honor his legacy, not just as a president, but as the man who helped lead the fight against polio through the March of Dimes campaign. It's fitting, in a way, that the dime would become the coin to honor him. Yet even this modest tribute, in 1982, became a vessel for mystery and surprise. The Denver Mint, with its long-standing reputation for precision, didn't often produce anomalies. So when collectors confirmed the no Mint marked dime's origin, The excitement only grew. It was a numismatic paradox, a coin from Denver with no D. And because the error was so clean, and the circulation so limited, values began to climb. At first, it was hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, and eventually, for the right coin, in the right condition, over $100,000. What separates the truly valuable versions of this coin from others isn't just the missing mint mark, it's preservation. The highest prices are commanded by coins that were never touched, never tossed in change jars or soda machines. They were pulled from fresh rolls at the bank, placed immediately into protective sleeves by someone who recognized their potential, and preserved across decades like hidden gold. These coins, graded MS-68 or higher, now rank among the most coveted modern-era dimes in existence. And with each passing year, as circulation coins become more worn and degraded, their rarity and their value increases. Imagine reaching into your pocket for a handful of change and pulling out a small, ordinary dime. Its edges feel familiar, its weight almost non-existent, and its size hardly commands attention. You flip it casually between your fingers, unaware that you're holding something far more valuable than anyone might expect. It's not just any dime. It's a 1994 Roosevelt 1 dime, and in some very rare cases, that modest coin could be worth more than $100,000. What if the ordinary was extraordinary all along? What if that sliver of metal, dated 1994 and stamped with AD for Denver, was part of a story you never knew existed? The journey of this coin begins, as so many American coins do, in the rich legacy of U.S. numismatics. The Roosevelt dime series was first introduced in 1946, just months after the death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Chosen not only for his presidential leadership, but for his personal battle against polio and the establishment of the March of Dimes, Roosevelt was immortalized in the 10-cent piece. The coin was a symbol of progress, of recovery, of national unity after war. Its simple yet dignified design featured his profile on the obverse, paired with a torch, an olive branch, and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. By 1994, the Roosevelt dime had become a stalwart of American currency, its design barely changed in nearly 5 decades. Yet that consistency made even the smallest errors stand out dramatically to those who knew what to look for. That year, the Denver Mint produced millions of dimes. Most followed the expected format, uniform, standard, unremarkable. But as with many things in life, a few exceptions slipped through the cracks. Whether due to misaligned dies, double strikes, off-center minting, or an anomaly in metal composition, certain 1994 D dimes took on characteristics that would make them invaluable to collectors decades later. To the casual eye, they looked the same. A tiny D, just to the left of Roosevelt's neck, the date 1994 sharply etched below, the usual silvery sheen of a clad composition, outer layers of copper-nickel bonded over a pure copper core. But it was in the microscopic details, the unexpected imperfections, the anomalies that defied mass production, where value took root. For numismatists, it wasn't enough to own the coin. The coin had to be examined, under magnification, under scrutiny, under curiosity. And those who did that found gems. Some examples of the 1994 D Roosevelt dime displayed doubling on the date or the mint mark, tiny duplications of letters or numerals that occurred when the die struck the coin more than once with slight movement. Others revealed broad strikes, where the coin was not properly centered in the color during minting, and thus appeared distorted or stretched, yet retained all critical details. There were off-center strikes, where part of the design was missing altogether. And even more elusive, some were struck on incorrect planchets, giving the dime a surprising weight, composition, or thickness, details only noticed by someone with a trained eye or a precise scale. Each of these errors didn't just make the coin interesting, they made it scarce. And in the world of rare coin collecting, scarcity drives passion. Collectors began to seek these coins out. They searched bank rolls, bought unsearched lots, and poured through circulated dimes hoping to find a miracle in metal. Those who were lucky enough to stumble upon one, especially in uncirculated condition, held in their hands something far more powerful than 10 cents. They held a piece of American minting history that had somehow slipped past the strict controls of one of the world's most advanced mints. Grading companies began to take note. Submissions of 1994 D dimes with unusual characteristics increased. Coins were evaluated, cataloged, and graded. The highest examples, mint state 67, 68, and even 69, began to surface. And with them came auction prices that stunned even seasoned dealers. At first, it was a few $100s, then a few thousand. Eventually, coins in perfect condition with rare errors began to command values reaching well into the tens of thousands. One pristine specimen, combining a rare double strike with flawless surface quality, was valued as high as $120,000. Not because it was made of gold or platinum, but because of its story, its rarity, and the fact that so few people even knew to look for it. This is where the romance of coin collecting truly lies, not just in gold eagles or silver dollars, but in the quiet transformation of the everyday into the extraordinary. The 1994 D Roosevelt dime is a symbol of that transformation. A tiny piece of art struck at high speed in a bustling mint, it went on a journey through hands, pockets, and drawers. Some were spent. Others were lost. But a few were saved, preserved in their original shine, and discovered years later to be rare jewels in the numismatic world. What if a coin that slipped into your pocket without a second thought held a secret capable of rewriting everything you knew about spare change? Imagine that while the world moved forward in 1970, chasing innovation and progress, one dime quietly made its way through minting presses with just enough imperfection to make it unforgettable. It was a dime that didn't seek attention, didn't shine with gold or silver, and didn't boast unusual size. It was common in shape and feel, but hidden within its tiny metallic body was a story of precision, error, timing, and mystery that few people would notice, until decades later, when collectors began to realize that some of these little coins could be worth more than an entire college education. This is the story of the 1970 Roosevelt dime, a coin minted for function, yet born to become legend. Back in 1970, America was in the middle of a transformation. The echoes of the 1960s were still ringing in the background. Civil rights marches, the moon landing, Woodstock. The world felt like it was rushing forward. In the midst of it all, the U.S. Mint continued its tireless duty of striking coins to support the country's growing economy. At the time, the Roosevelt dime was already a household fixture. First introduced in 1946, it had honored President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his death, celebrating not only his wartime leadership, but his role in founding the March of Dimes to combat polio. The dime was a fitting tribute, compact, vital, and enduring. The 1970 Roosevelt dime was produced at two major mints, Philadelphia, which bore no mint mark, and Denver, which was marked with a small D on the obverse, just to the left of Roosevelt's neckline. That year, the San Francisco Mint also struck a limited number of proof dimes, brilliant, mirror-finished coins intended solely for collectors, each bearing an S mint mark. These San Francisco strikes were never meant for circulation, but as with many things in numismatics, what's intended doesn't always match reality. That's where the story gets interesting. Because in the early 1970s, rumors began to swirl in collector circles about a peculiar Roosevelt dime, one without a mint mark, in proof condition, from 1970. A coin that simply wasn't supposed to exist. A ghost, the so-called no S proof dime, from 1970 became a legend. Somehow, a small number of proof dimes had been struck in San Francisco without receiving their S mint mark. These errors were not intentional, just a fluke, the result of a missing or improperly prepared die. But the effect was monumental. Only a few are known to exist, and when they were discovered, they immediately drew interest from high-end collectors who knew that minting mistakes of this caliber were exceedingly rare. The 1970 no-S proof Roosevelt dime was quickly recognized as one of the rarest modern coins ever struck by the United States Mint. But even outside of this mythical variety, the 1970 Roosevelt dime holds value, especially in high-grade uncirculated condition. Over the years, examples with full bands across the torch on the reverse side, known as full torch or full bands, have become particularly desirable. These designations indicate that the coin was struck with enough pressure to clearly define even the smallest elements of the coin's intricate reverse, which can be lost on lower quality strikes. Add in potential doubling, off-center strikes, or coins accidentally minted on transitional planchets, and suddenly the 1970 dime becomes a treasure trove for error hunters. Each time a collector stumbles across one in pristine condition, nowhere, brilliant luster, and microscopic details perfectly preserved, it becomes more than just a piece of currency. It becomes a time capsule, a relic of 1970 craftsmanship. Collectors, grading companies, and investors alike know the value of perfection. When a 1970 Roosevelt dime receives a top grade from a reputable grading service, say MS-67 or higher, its value can skyrocket. Combine that with a known error or unique anomaly, and that same dime could be auctioned off for tens of thousands, even exceeding six figures if the conditions are just right. Imagine holding a dime in your hand that once was worth only 10 cents but now commands a price tag of $182,000. That's not a dream. It's the real, documented potential of this coin. Some specimens, particularly those few no-S-proof examples, have fetched over $20,000 even in mid-grade. Higher grades? Those are nearly priceless to the right buyer, and it's not just about money. For many collectors, owning a 1970 Roosevelt dime with a known error or rare minting variety is like owning a slice of hidden history, proof that even in a tightly controlled minting system, surprises still happen. That's what keeps the hunt alive, keeps the eyes of collectors glued to coin rolls and dealer boxes. Somewhere out there, perhaps in a forgotten jewelry box or a dusty attic jar, another 1970 dime may be waiting to be discovered. Maybe it's flawless. Maybe it's a no-S proof. Maybe it's a simple Denver Mint example with crisp details and rich luster. Whatever it is, it carries the weight of history and the potential for incredible value.